Armor sets in Outward are very important, whether they provide stupid damage resistances, damage bonuses or mobility boosts. Choosing a set appropriate for your build is essential. However, naming the best armor set for every single conceivable build is, well, impossible. So rather, today I'll name my top 5 ones based on how many positives they provide and how versatile they are. Editing Flamnap here, just a quick addendum. This is of course a top 6 list. I don't know how the fuck I managed to say top 5, but I don't know, who cares? Again, keep in mind that there are many other viable and oftentimes more useful pieces of armor for your specific build, but ranking every single one would take time I don't have, as I'm currently busy investing into Pussycoin, as my favorite internet nonce promoted it yesterday. When it comes to heavy plate armors, their value is basically entirely derived from what element they predominantly negate, as their protection and physical resistance stats are most often nearly identical. So, in the right cases against the right enemies, the wolf set is the best, or the candle plate, or the palladium, or the crimson plate set. However, you and I both know that being prepared for every single one of these situations is a task our modern brains, trained to only think about the next release of dopamine in approximately 20 seconds, is mostly incapable of. The blue set armor offers a very competent solution to that. It can be acquired incredibly easily, incredibly early on, and it offers 20% resistances to every single element, as well as of course high but not overtly immense physical resistances. And while that will result in slightly inferior performance against most enemies when compared to the optimal armor set, chances are you're not carrying around 5 backpacks full of plate set to switch between. And so, with just the appropriate boon and some Ceres Avicii or similar, you're quite well equipped to handle any encounter, so that when you do eventually die, you know that it's entirely and inexcusably due to your own incompetency. Also, there are many scenarios in which you're confronted with more than one damage type, and so the blue set armor's value as the Swiss Army knife for defensive utility is obvious. But what if you don't feel like lumbering around as a tin can though? Well, usually you put on the Master Trader armor, zooming around until you engage in combat. The problem with that, not only did you use up inventory space that could ideally be instead occupied by delicious eggs, but also switching constantly is annoying, so you end up not switching at all, instead just fighting in your trader garments until you're clipped by one too many attacks and die. Introducing the Entomber armor to solve this conundrum. It offers very good mobility, 15% improvements to both speed and stamina regen, and more importantly, gets dangerously close to plate armor in its defenses. 45%. What the fuck were they thinking? No, ever since the release of the definitive edition, protection has of course been buffed, and so the Entomber set's lack of it definitely prevents it from making heavy armors entirely redundant, as it did in Oldwood, but it still teeters the line between a compromise and just flat out being too much. And that's not to mention its 60% negation of both decay and lightning damage, which frankly is kinda stupid. Lastly, it's also really easy to acquire. You can just buy it in Levant or find it in any fucking chest in our bazaar. And it looks really fucking cool. Slaying monsters this stripped out is a certified guarantor to also slay pussy. 43 fucking % frost damage bonus. Do I even need to say more? Well, okay, there are some more things to say. The defensive stats are solid. Most significantly, you become basically immune to frost damage, meaning that against enemies that aren't particularly impressed by your ice-based assaults, you are in turn immune too. But ultimately, the ice damage bonus is the focal point, and in fact, the only thing that truly matters, as a metric fuck ton of late game weapons deal ice damage. The only negatives I can think of are that it of course isn't the very best when it comes to physical negation, and it makes you look like a red devil, which is both cool but also evocative of Manchester lost to Tottenham in the Europa Cup Final United, so I'm not really sure how to feel about the visuals. And also, you have to commit to the blue chamber and not fuck up to get this armor, which isn't a big deal. The blue chamber is the best faction regardless, but still something to note. Or you could just use legacy chests. Speaking of legacy chests, wow, very POC transition, the Mana Wall armor acquired by putting regular old barrier armor into legacy chests. This set just does everything right. Starting with the damage bonus, 30% ethereal is the best available for that particular element, and many S-tier weapons such as Gap's Blades, the Dreamer Halberd or the Ghost Parallel employ that damage type, and to a lesser extent and grind. But then, also, look at this shit. 10 protection and 13 fucking barrier. Are you aware of how fucking stupid that is? Well, okay, I reckon just having high resistances would be better still, but 10 and 13 flat damage reductions to physical and all elemental damage respectively is still really solid, considering that, well, we're also getting 20% movement speed and no penalty whatsoever to mana or stamina. There is a negative, however, namely, well, we have to get this set from legacy chests, so unless you're 100% dedicated to an ethereal weapon, you might want to use those limited slots for something more universal. Much like eating your veggies is important, nutritional advice hopefully given to you by your parents, impact being the most important combat stat without competition is one piece of advice you should be given as soon as possible, as stun-locking enemies provides both ample opportunity for free attacks and prevents the enemy from attacking themselves, meaning that one stat governs both high offensive utility as well as the ultimate defensive utility. As such, the shock armor provides incredible value to almost any build as it increases your impact damage dealt by a frankly stupid 30%. That's like having amplified rage constantly activated at any given time. And unlike with most other sets boosting only specific damage types, the coveting of impact damage is now universal, so no matter which weapon or damage type you're using, you can and will benefit to an eye-opening extent. And the positives don't stop there, the damage negation is very reasonable too. 47% physical resistance and 3 protection is perfectly adequate, and the impact resistance of 55% is actually above average even for plate armors, and not getting constantly interrupted is in fact quite nice. Also, you're immune to lightning damage. Cool. Pog. Yippee! However, the shock set cannot possibly get the top spot, as, well, it's an endgame. In my script it says weapon. It's not a weapon, requiring both good RNG and a copious amount of farming to acquire, but if you don't have a life like me, it's one of the best sets of armor you can wear. Also, you can just press F1, type in shock and yeah, you could also just do that if you can't be asked. 46% physical damage resistance. No, that's probably not gonna get the neurons firing. 12 cold weather defense? Okay, well, that's probably not it either. How about 20% cooldown reduction? With the assassin enchantment, also 20% physical damage bonus and 20% impact damage bonus. That's right, with the assassin enchantment, this shit is absolute peak. For melee builds, it gives you everything you need and more. Who the fuck cares about defensive utility? Just don't get hit. It's really that easy. Just don't get hit. Just to elaborate a bit more, cooldown reduction is an incredibly rare stat to get at, especially on armors remotely suited to close range engagement. The same goes for impact damage increase. I of course just talked about the shock armor, but outside of that, it's really not that common at all. Now, this set does require the use of legacy chests, and you of course should probably enchant it, and enchanting is a pain in the ass. But, well, quite frankly, I don't fucking care. This armor set is so incredibly versatile that unless you're going for a purely elemental damage based mage, you will benefit, and in 95% of cases, immensely so. As you might have noticed, there's a distinct lack of mage armors here, and to be honest, it would be really hard to account for mage-centric options. Many of the good armor pieces don't have full sets, and spell combinations can vary to an extreme extent. Mixing and matching armors is more likely than not your best option. There really isn't one set that can adequately account for multiple damage types at the same time, and with most decent mage builds, you will deal at least 2 damage types. So I might make either a top 5 exclusively for mage armors, or, well, the all armor pieces ranking video. I really don't want to do that. That would be a pain in the ass. Regardless, don't take anything of this too seriously. All of the armors here are of course top shelf, but I'm not the objective arbiter of what you should or shouldn't use, so just consider this mildly informative entertainment. And if you weren't entertained, well, thanks for watching regardless, though I do question why you would in that case. Bye.